Welcome to the Centre for Legal Innovation's Legal Techy Tuesday series. We are very excited to have Owen Oliver, Head of Product from StructureFlow, here with us today. Owen will demonstrate how StructureFlow brings the power of visualisation to legal and business professionals. Again, welcome. Fabulous to have you all here. And now over to Owen.
Thank you very much, Christine, and good afternoon, everybody, or good morning if you're in the UK like me. So I'm here to talk about StructureFlow. And just a quick introduction to myself. I used to be a corporate associate at Field Fisher in London very many years ago now. And then I sort of moved over into legal technology. I was the creator of a transaction management product, sort of online checklists for legal deals, with a company. I did that with a company called Workshare, and the product was called Workshare Transact. And that product is now sold as Transact after an acquisition. So I joined StructureFlow about a year ago as the head of product. So StructureFlow is all about visualization. It's a tool for legal and finance professionals, and there's a focus on sort of generating legal structures, transactions, and processes. So we're talking about things like group company structures, transaction structures, steps plans, legal process charts, that sort of thing is its sort of speciality. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through an introduction, really. I'm going to talk about visualization and its role within the legal world, and why this, why visualization is important, the different ways that it's used within legal, some of the history, some of the problems, and then how StructureFlow came about against that. And then I'll move on to talk about the product, and then we'll move into a demo, and you can see exactly what StructureFlow looks like today. So in terms of that introduction, we always like to start talking in our product pitches about visualization and how critical it is in conveying a understanding of complexity. So if you just take a look at this image for a second, and just imagine that I was going to ask you to describe in words alone everything that you see within this image. We'd be here for a really, really long time. But when you see this image, everything just hits you at once. You don't need to describe anything at all. You just take in so much very quickly. And that's the power of visualization. You just understand things. When they're visual, you understand visual information just so much faster. The human brain just processes it so much faster. And the world is just shifting more and more towards visual formats. So in our daily lives, our mobile devices are dominated by apps such as Instagram, very visual. And in business, people are moving more and more towards sort of visual data dashboards in products like Tableau. And this isn't about people changing their preference. It's just that humans always have understood visual information faster. And as time progresses, technology enables that information to be displayed, content to be created visually. And that's what people want. And if you think about sort of legal is no exception to that at all, really. Legal concepts and legal matters can be hugely complex. Legal matters often include really large groups of people working across different organizations, different institutions, all coming together to work through a sort of problem or a deal or a dispute. And so bringing in visualization is really critical in many different ways, to convey understanding, to align stakeholders, to identify all the issues, all the risks in a particular matter. And that's really what, if clients of legal businesses, that's what they're expecting. People want more visualization, and it's no longer okay just to provide sort of dense documentation. People want to be able to understand it quickly. So that's the introduction to visualization, and we are now obviously building up quite a deep understanding at StructureFlow of how visualization is used within legal, or at least within our customer base. I mean, most of our customers are sort of business law firms at the moment, but even within that customer profile, we see a really sort of wide range of diagramming types. And so there's this, obviously in areas such as corporate and banking and tax, those professionals are working with group structures and transaction structures all the time. There's huge complexity in sort of complex group structures, the way that tax professionals will structure a group to create the most efficiency. But beyond that, we're seeing a huge use of visualization, perhaps in some areas that we didn't necessarily expect to see so much. So, within our customers, we're seeing visualization used in areas such as disputes. So with a transaction, for example, you're trying to sort of show people what's going to happen through the future of a transaction. With a dispute, you might need to show people what happened leading up to, the facts leading up to a dispute or a case. So you're showing sort of historical events, but visualization is great for showing that complexity as well. And then in areas such as data protection, data flows are becoming more and more important as data laws get more and more complex globally. So showing how consumer data and different types of business data transfer around a group is really important. And then lawyers of all types are creating ad hoc advice and things like flowcharts to sort of steer their way or their client's way through a particular piece of legislation or regulation or just a general piece of legal advice. And so there's lots and lots of different use cases for visualization within the legal context. And as an example of how complex legal and business arrangements can get, this is an example of a chart that we prepared for one of the Legal Geek conferences, showing visualization of the various arrangements surrounding the Greensill Capital, corporate scandal. And this is just what we could sort of ascertain from public articles. And when we got into it, we just saw how huge and complex all of these arrangements were. It'd be very, very difficult to make sense of all of these different aspects of this matter. All the different actors and all the different companies involved. It's very difficult to make sense of that without visualizing it. And what we say is that maybe if there'd been a better understanding of all of these arrangements, then it might not have all unfolded and come crashing down like it did. And this is a really interesting sort of project that we have in StructureFlow that you can actually get access to if you want. So get in touch with us if you want to sort of take a closer look at this project that we created that really shows the complexity of all of that. And this has been, this is sort of, this visualization trend is not, something that's brand new. It's been going on for decades. And again, we were preparing for another conference talk based on visualization, and we came across this structure chart from the 1930s, and this is a JP Morgan organization chart showing affiliated entities to the bank and some of the economic interests held within them. There are different colored line types to indicate different roles that those affiliated entities are playing, different colors to show which parts of the bank are relevant. So it's just a really fantastic example of how important and long-standing the role of visualization has been within legal structuring, within financial affairs. So we absolutely love that diagram. But the problem is that lawyers are great at words. They love producing documents. That's what they're there for. That's what they're great at. That's what they're paid for. And they're great at using Microsoft Word, but not so great at visual software. And this is an example of a sort of early chart from one of our sort of early customers, showing that when these charts are created in legal businesses, they can tend to come out not so great. I think most lawyers find them very sort of painful and frustrating to create. They don't like using tools like PowerPoint or Visio. Just endlessly moving shapes and lines around, trying to get it perfect. They can get very frustrated with it. And often the outcome is something that's sort of messy and inconsistent and maybe a bit unclear. And that's exactly what you don't want. That's what visualization is not there for. Visualization is there to bring clarity, not to confuse people further. But that's not the only problem that we see with the use of these visualizations. There's problems around the information that they can display as well. When you produce a chart like this, they're very sort of limited in terms of the information that they can display. They're essentially flat 2D drawings, whereas these visualizations often represent a huge amount of underlying information about the matter, about the transaction that they're representing. But you can't sort of display that information. You can't cram in a lot of the information that you need to on that sort of single slide. So that's a problem as well. And what happens there is that that information is just fragmented. It's in different documents in different organisations, and there isn't sort of a central place where that information could be shown. And then there are other problems in terms of collaboration on these charts as well. And just like any other sort of type of documentation that you're creating within legal, a lot of the time, you can create a version of the structure chart. You can circulate it to your working group, to the people involved. But quite soon, there might be another version of that chart. You'll go through different versions, and then you're sort of working on the risk that somebody doesn't have the latest version of that chart. So you can have multiple versions in circulation, and again, you've got this risk that people aren't on the same page. And that again, is exactly what you're not looking for with visualization. It's all about trying to get that understanding and to get everybody on the same page and aligned. So there's a lot of problems around the creation of these visualizations within legal, and that's really where StructureFlow came from. But if you look at other industries, legal is really lagging behind. Other industries have had their own sort of bespoke visualization modeling tools for decades. So, for example, the classic example is computer-aided design in the areas of architecture and construction, and they enable those professionals to build, to create a model for something that's very specific to their industry. Understands lots of different things about the sort of the context that it's operating within. So that's the context against which StructureFlow exists. We believe it's time for legal to catch up, and StructureFlow is sort of providing that next generation visualization tool for legal that's sort of against that sort of backdrop. So that's against all of that background. StructureFlow was formed in 2017. Tim Follett is the founder of the company and CEO. He's a former corporate lawyer at Slaughter and May in London, and he just considered himself a very visual person. Had a very strong visual sense. Used visualization a lot within his practice. Really liked using it to convey understanding, and didn't see the tooling out there to help him, and saw this as a great opportunity. So Tim's built a really really strong experienced leadership team around him to sort of capitalize on this opportunity. He won the Slaughter and May Collaborate competition a couple of years ago. We're in Fuse at the moment at Allen Overy, and we've got a really fabulous sort of customer base built up. So that's the sort of background behind our company, and I'm going to move on now to talk a little bit about the product itself. And as I say, StructureFlow is a next generation visualization tool for legal, with a focus on structures and transactions. And in terms of the functionality, there are three main areas of functionality that correspond to the problems that I talked about just now. And the first sort of key area of functionality is what we call rapid diagramming. And this is the sort of toolkit that enables you to build out legal diagrams quickly, again, with that focus on structures and transactions. So I've got some videos here to show, to explain these three areas of functionality. So let me show the first one here. And essentially what you're seeing here is that users are sort of dragging and dropping onto the canvas, not sort of just normal generic shapes, but these predefined components, these predefined objects such as companies and assets and contracts. You just select them and bring them on from the left-hand side toolbar. And you bring them onto the canvas and then connect them together with these automatically routing relationship lines. And those are to display ownership and contractual relationships and what we call flows for the flow of funding or payments or services. So it's less like drawing and it's more like the modeling of these structures, and it's just really simple to use. We say it's like Lego for lawyers, and what it means is that you can build up complex diagrams incredibly quickly, and the result is always really clear and professional and consistent. And our customers often get their clients commenting on how nicely presented these charts are. So that's the first area of functionality. Rapid diagramming. You can really easily get to create your structure and or transaction chart really quickly. Saves you tons of time in the course of doing that with this great result. And then the second key area is around information. So what we say is that StructureFlow is an intelligent solution. And what we mean by that is that as you sort of build out a structure or a transaction chart, StructureFlow builds out a sort of data model for the transaction underneath. So you can see that on the right hand side here in this what we call the data panel, there's an entry there for every sort of component that's been added to the canvas. So every entity, every individual, every contract. It's logged within the data model within StructureFlow, and so StructureFlow knows understands what's an asset, what's an entity, what's a contract, and it understands the relationships between them. So I'm just going to play this video again here. So in this data panel, you can also add further details, about the ownership of the company, about the directors, about the contract terms. And so that just adds this extra layer of information about what's going on in your chart. So you can add, you can also add in this area, you can add key sort of documentation as well. So links to that. So, if it's a draft version of a document that's being worked on the transaction, or completed documents, you can create a sort of visual transaction Bible. You can link to corporate documentation against sort of individual companies. So essentially, all of this functionality, what it does, it takes your structure from 2D to 3D, and it adds that extra layer and turns this, into an interface for information on the matter. So just going beyond that sort of 2D piece of paper. And this is an area where there'll be lots more development in future. Bringing in that information through integrations with different types of functionality, such as corporate repositories to bring in company information quickly, or linking with an entity management system to bring in that sort of information about group entities, so they'd be able to sort of create these diagrams and projects that are sort of densely populated with underlying information very quickly. And then in the third area of functionality, we're talking about collaboration. So obviously StructureFlow, if you're just using it for the creation of an image, a visualization, you want to put that back into a Word document, a PowerPoint presentation, you can do that really easily. But the option is there for you to share, and this is really important because particularly when you're thinking about structures and transactions and business matters, it's a shared experience. It's not something that happens in isolation. It's multiple people, organizations, people with different skill sets all coming together to sort of make sure that the structure, the transaction is exactly how it should be. And so collaboration is really important, so this video is just showing how you kind of invite people into your StructureFlow project. And of course, the benefit here is that working in this way means that everybody has this central resource for that matter. They can just come in here, they know exactly what's going on, what the current structure is. They're always going to see the latest version of that chart, the latest version of all the underlying information, knowing they've got the latest information to hand. And you can also collaborate through comments. So what this essentially means is that everybody's on the same page. That risk of misalignment that you have with the circulation of documents showing that visualization, that's removed. So that's a really important aspect of the application. So this product, this generation of the product has been with us for about 18 months now, and we've built up this really amazing customer base with the tool. So here are some of the announcements. We have a really sort of wide sort of variety of customers. We have a worldwide sort of customer base, showing that this isn't anything, to do with a particular jurisdiction. This is a really flexible tool that can help visualization in lots of different scenarios and circumstances around the world. We have a customer base in Australia. We have an Australian instance of the application to enable that, to enable the data to be stored locally. We also have a really sort of the stats coming off the application of what I talked about before about the sort of wide variety of usages coming through. So you can see here that corporate users are the most popular category of user, but we have that user base across many different sort of practice areas within law firms, within legal business. And again, that's just showing to us the sort of the scope for visualization within different areas of the practice. And I think my goal is to kind of even this up over time and just sort of make this as a really a visualization tool that really corresponds to the needs of legal and finance professionals in many different sort of areas. We do actually have customers outside of law firms. We're kind of focusing a little bit on law firms at the moment, but over the next 18 months, we expect more and more customer types to come through, sort of focus more on different needs. We have customers already in accountancy and within private equity, and so the expectation is that again that will balance out over the next sort of 12 to 18 months. And also I really like this, just in respect of the different people that use our application. It's not something that's just for for junior legal staff in law firms. It's people at all levels within our customer bases are using this tool, and in particular, the senior associates and partners that are doing a lot of structuring work really enjoy using this tool. It's almost as a sort of they can use it as as like a thinking tool. It's the replacement for pen and paper. So you've been on a call with a client. There's a new transaction or a new structure coming up. You've had a conversation about it. You can jump into StructureFlow, very easily sketch out what that might look like, and as you might have done previously with pen and paper, and then just send something back to the client within 15 minutes, showing how you think this might work. So it's really appreciated by that level of legal personnel for those sorts of reasons. And just a quick note on the vision for the product. I'm going to jump into the demo very shortly. And what you'll see is that StructureFlow is a really great sort of tool for visualization. It enables you to create them rapidly, and that's fantastic. But what we stress to our customer base is that this is more than about providing just a replacement PowerPoint for certain diagram types. We're on a bigger journey than that. And this is quite a cheesy image to show what we mean by that. This is one of the NASA control centers from the 60s, planning the missions to the moon. But you can see the importance of visualization within this setup. Everything is there. The visualization is the first thing that you go to. And what we're doing in the product is really want to make the most of that underlying data aspect. We want to start, rather than just having it as a sort of resource where that information could be found, we want to start using it, so you can, we want to sort of help people, analyze what's happening within their structure or within their sort of transaction, and help people do things like optimize the structure itself. What's the best way to structure this? How can we use the underlying data to help with that? How can we identify risks, in this matter, in this transaction? And head more towards the idea of modeling of buildings, like in the CAD software that I described earlier. And we envisage StructureFlow being almost this control center for transactions, a place where you can manage transactions and see current status and delve into different aspects of the information that's underlying what's happening. So hopefully that was a really interesting introduction to our product and into visualization. And I'm going to jump now into the application. Okay, fantastic. So what you're looking at here is the StructureFlow product, and this is our sort of Homepage, this is all the sort of transactions that that we have, that I have on the go at the moment. Projects that I've created or ones that I've been invited to by others. And when you create a new project within StructureFlow, it looks something along these lines. So it's a blank canvas, and I can turn on a grid here to sort of show what that looks like. So similar to to other sort of types of visualization tools, but on the left-hand side here is the sort of key distinction. And so on the left-hand side, you can sort of bring in different components, different elements, and they're sort of shown here as being things like entities. So different types of entities. A branch. You can bring in a contract, an asset. So those are the key components that you use to build out, your sort of structure charts, your legal diagram within StructureFlow. And then we have these different sort of connector modes here that again are very specific to the creation of legal diagrams. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of build a quick sort of chart just to show you how sort of easy it is to start putting together a chart with StructureFlow. So what I do is I'll just go over to the left hand side and I just sort of pick up a component. So I'm just going to place an individual on my canvas. And what you can see is that as I move this around, you can see that we have quite a rigid grid system. And essentially what that does is that when you're creating a sort of large chart, that grid system is, just really enables you to be able to create a really nicely ordered structure without sort of doing too much work, without having to align things and spend time on that sort of thing. So I can just drop this, where I want to on the onto the canvas. And then I'm going to sort of maybe pick out a corporate. So maybe this company owns this company here. So I'm going to place that below. And then maybe that company owns an asset. So I'm going to make this maybe this is something sort of a factory or something like that. And maybe on this transaction as well, I'm going to use the short keys here to add some more another entity. Maybe there's sort of like a lending arrangement here. So this is going to be my my lender. And then I can go into these ownership modes, the line connectors. So I'm going to go into the ownership mode here. And I'm just going to sort of start connecting these with these particular relationship lines, like so. So again, rather than sort of messing around with the sort of generic lines that you might have to do in PowerPoint, I can just connect these very, very quickly, and my diagram starts to build out much easier than I otherwise could. I'm going to draw a contract between the company and the lender to put that in place. So maybe that's my sort of my loan agreement, my facility agreement. And then we have these really nice lines to show flows. As I say, these are to show the flow of funding or payments or that sort of thing around the structure. So maybe this is there's going to be a loan here. So I'm going to show that loan going into the company there, and then maybe this individual is giving a sort of guarantee back to the lender. So I'm going to choose my flow line that shows a guarantee, and I'm going to sort of send that back to the lender here. And these are really nice sort of curved lines that sort of you can do whatever you want with. You can just move them around really nicely and show things how you want to. So that's just a really, really sort of very quick and clear example of how you build out a chart with these different components. For the types of things that legal and finance professionals are creating all the time, those components are there to help them create them quickly. And of course, as I'll show in a second and go into a bit more detail, these components are sort of geared towards that type of thing that it is. So the underlying sort of fields that attach to these components in the data panel corresponds to the types of things that they are. So we'll come on to that in a minute. But essentially what it means is that you can build out sort of a basic structure of this nature very quickly. So this is perhaps something more along the lines and the size of something that one of our customers might be asked to build for a client, for example. And so from this point onwards, what we'd expect to do is to perhaps sort of, start adding formatting to this to make it look, a bit more interesting, to add a bit more detail. And there are lots of different tools that we can use to do that. And again, they're sort of nicely geared towards legal charts. So first of all, I might want to sort of just bring in some color into this chart. Sort of maybe I want to sort of produce this in the firm's colors or in the client colors, and some of this can be sort of preordained. So I can sort of bring some color in here. Maybe I want to make my lender, nice sort of red color to show the importance of that. And then maybe I want to sort of indicate where the origin of these companies, for example. So to give a bit of color on that. So what we have these sort of 6 sort of anchor points here to be able to kind of add symbols and flags. So this is a UK holdco. So maybe I just want to add the British, add the English flag there. This is obviously the US group. So I can come in and maybe add the US flag there. So those flags just to indicate the origin of entities, the sort of jurisdiction of contracts and that sort of thing. But again, it's just really, really quick to be able to add those to the entities. And then perhaps I want to add some symbols. So maybe these intermediate holdcos are going to be giving security under this new lending arrangement. So I can choose from these symbols to add into the to add to the entity as well. I can make these different colors and that sort of thing. So that's just like a nice way of being able to sort of indicate different things about different aspects of the group. And then once I have sort of added those things, we have this automatically generated key here to be able to sort of ascribe meaning for these things. So maybe I want to clarify that this is the UK part of the group. We have some automatic descriptions here for the flags that I've used, and maybe for this symbol here, I want to say that this is security given under the loan agreement or something like that. So so this is just a really very quick way of being able to generate the key for this image, and I can just show that on the canvas like so, and then just position that where I want to position it on my structure. So we're slowly, we're sort of just piecing together the sort of the visualization, the group structure, very efficiently, very quickly, using these very bespoke tools to be able to sort of to create it. And sort of very soon, you can get to something like this, a very, really clear and professional and complete, visualization, showing very clearly the different types of things that you want to show within the chart. And so that's really this this rapid diagramming element of the application. Once you've created a single chart like this, you can actually go into the sequencing element, and this is where you can produce multiple visualizations within the same project. So if, for example, I wanted to create a plan like this that shows the steps through a transaction, I can sort of duplicate my chart, and maybe the first one is to show the external funding, and the second one is to show sort of internal funding arrangements like so. Then I can perhaps add a new flow here. So maybe there's some internal funding going to this company here, and when I have done that, then I can sort of go into presentation mode, and I can just sort of flick between these charts and sort of have a really nice experience of being able to sort of guide somebody through the structuring of a transaction through those sort of steps. And so you can create as many steps as you want within these projects to be able to sort of show complex transaction steps plans through the journey. Okay, so let's say we've created our visualization, and we obviously want to circulate this to the people that we're working with. And you can do that in different ways. And first of all, you can export this as an image or as a PDF. So obviously, if you're wanting to create something like a due diligence report, for example, then and this image is part of that, then you can export that image and insert this into your deck. Lots of different options here for being able to export. And you can also create these, what we call these reports. So this is essentially a PDF. But when you create these, it will actually produce in a really nice sort of customer, sort of client-facing format, so that you don't even have to use PowerPoint to be able to present your visualization. So if this is a transaction chart that you've put together, you've had a call with a client that afternoon, this will have your the sort of firm logo, the customer logo, the title of the project, and again the sort of chart is created, but with a sort of nicely topped and tailed second page there. And again, this will show all the steps if you have them. So this is just you can very rapidly create that chart, but very rapidly sort of generate it within a sort of shareable format for sort of public consumption. You can also just work really nicely with these charts and something like PowerPoint. So if I just select everything here and copy it, then I can come into my PowerPoint deck and I can just sort of copy that in very quickly and just reposition it. And again, so it's a really nice way of working between sort of your Office documents and StructureFlow. Okay, cool. So so I'm just what I'm going to show now. So just to show some of the different types of visualization that can be created, and just go back to sort of talking about those use cases before I talk about the other areas of the application. So this is a sort of group structure. So this is obviously something that would be created perhaps as part of a due diligence exercise. So for example, one company is buying another company. There's a sort of group of entities within that target company, and as part of that due diligence exercise, you want to be sure what the group structure looks like, so that the lawyers will sort of look into the corporate documentation and sort of create the structure chart from scratch based on that information, so they have a very solid view of what that group looks like. Alternatively, this could be something that's maintained as part of that sort of legal entity management. So any sort of company that has a large number of group entities will need to maintain a chart for that exercise. And of course, lots of legal businesses are sort of running that as a service for many of their own clients. So they'll have lots and lots of these types of charts in existence, and they'll sort of be updated when something happens within that entity. If a company is sort of dissolved, or there's an acquisition, new companies come in. So these are being sort of maintained all the time. So it's a very common use case for the application. In terms of, this is just another example. Just in StructureFlow, you have this infinite canvas. So there's no sort of getting to the limits of your sort of PowerPoint slide, and I'm running out of space, or there's another element of the transaction you can't fit it on. You've got an infinite canvas here, and that's really nicely shown by this group structure chart. And you can just see when I zoom in how the quality is sort of preserved in that sort of context. Here we have a transaction structure. So this is the structure of a sort of private equity transaction, sort of MBO type structure, where management are buying out the company with the support of private equity money. So this is obviously a really common use case again for the software. Corporate lawyers, tax lawyers, plotting out exactly how a transaction is going to work, the different elements of it. You can see here, the sort of ownership at this level, and the investment agreement to be entered into by all of these different owning parties. We've got some sort of bank lending here in this area, and then we have the sort of target company here, owned by the seller, and there's going to be a share purchase agreement to acquire this target company. So this could be the entire structure, or it could be the first page of a number of visualizations. Maybe there's more detail on the target group, there's more detail on the lending arrangements. But StructureFlow is very heavily used for sort of planning out transactions, and obviously that step plan functionality is there for when there's a series of steps through a transaction. Moving on to sort of some of the other use cases that I referred to before. This is a really nice example of a chart that's been created in a sort of disputes team sort of situation. And this is this particular example has been for it's a bribery investigation. So there's lots of individuals involved, the different organisations. It looks like some government institutions are involved, different contracts, and so this is being put together to help understand how those different elements, different people, different organisations have sort of interacted together. To lead to these circumstances that led to a dispute. So this is a really nice example of how StructureFlow can be used, not for a traditional structure, not for a traditional transaction, but for a nice use case within legal. And we're seeing, typically we'll go into a customer and it'll be the corporate lawyers or the tax lawyers that will be the ones that have sort of seen StructureFlow, and maybe a colleague or an acquaintance has been using it. But as time goes on, the disputes lawyers and the commercial contracts lawyers, will see this in use, and they pick up usage and have lots of use cases of their own. So that's a really great sort of thing about StructureFlow, the breadth of usage for it. And then we have this, which is just a really nice simple example of a sort of process chart, flow chart for we see these all the time in legal, being created for clients to sort of really easily understand a particular aspect of advice or a particular regulation, even like a complex clause in a contract. This type of chart is just really helpful for legal type situations, and this is just using the the sort of toolkit that's within StructureFlow very effectively. Again, just really simple usage of the shapes and the lines to put something like this together very quickly, and just not get frustrated by creating the equivalent in PowerPoint or something like that. And in terms of all these different use cases, what we do have is a really nice document, is this StructureFlow in action document that sort of showcases a lot of these different use cases. And this is just a collection of anonymized customer charts that we've put together over the past sort of 12 months. You can see all the different areas where StructureFlow is being used, and within each of these examples, we've explained what's going on, what's being used, particularly in terms of the feature set. So if this is of interest for you, please get in touch with us, and we can sort of send you across a copy of this for you to take a look at. And it's really helpful to understand the different ways that StructureFlow can be used, across legal and across business. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to this chart here, just to talk about the sort of additional elements that we talked about before in terms of the underlying data and the sharing. So the sharing of projects is really straightforward. We have a big blue button for that. You can share with colleagues, you can share externally. So just a really nice way to work with different people. It's a very secure setup for the external sharing with an additional two-factor code. And you'll be able to see who your existing collaborators are, and kind of manage those within the project. And of course, the benefit of sharing your project, as opposed to exporting something and circulating it by email or putting it into a document, is that you get the benefit of this underlying information, the sort of additional knowledge that StructureFlow has about your structure. So this is our data panel on the right hand side here. I can just click to open this, and you can see here that every sort of entity, every contract, every element within my structure chart has been added into this data panel. So all these sort of entities here, but also the key assets, the contracts, the flows as well, and the documents that I've linked. So this is a really sort of comprehensive, directory data model of what's, of what my chart is. And I can click into any of these entities to see that further additional information. So if I click into the topco here, for example, then I can, see the sort of further additional details here about this particular entity. I can add some notes. I can add details of who the directors are. That's me. Great. I can add custom fields, which is very helpful if you're, particular sort of niche usage or something particular about this particular group or particular tax field, for example. I can add information on the shareholdings, so the ownership structure, different types of ownership units and who owns them. There's automatic calculation of those ownership interests, and that can be displayed on the canvas, as you can see here, automatically if you choose to do that. If this entity is party to contracts, that will show, but also we can link to documentation here as well. So what we do here is we sort of link to documentation. We don't actually sort of host it ourselves. So just clicking on that will show me that document, and we have a nice sort of functionality on the canvas here for being able to show that as well. So if I just click on this, then that sort of document will just display. So this is just really nice functionality for for bringing this visualization to life, offering more than a 2D visualization can, offering a sort of centralized repository for information that people can rely on to access. And the same with the contracts here. I can add information about the sort of the basic terms. It will sort of log who the parties are, and I can link to the documentation there as well. So as I say, all that functionality is where we sort of really going to focus on in the product over the next sort of 12 to 18 months. Different integrations, linking to different sources of data, and doing great things with it. And as a sort of example of that, if I go to the bottom of my chart here, I can right click and I can sort of click this option here, which is to highlight ownership. And when I highlight ownership, that will show all of the sort of owning entities right up to the top of the chart. So that's just a really nice functionality that is really helpful. But that's possible because StructureFlow understands the relationships between the structure, between the entities within my structure. So if this was PowerPoint, just shapes and lines, we couldn't do those sorts of things. But because that ownership relationship is understood, it means that we can show that. And our focus is going to be on on more types of that functionality that gives insights and sort of gives you more detail about the structure that than you can just sort of tell from seeing it. And there's lots of different areas, and we're working with our customers on what those different things might be. Applying sort of different regulations and different rules within sort of structures, within transaction structures, to sort of start bringing this to life, and in that sort of sense, and offering more in terms of the analysis of what's going on in your structures and your matters. Okay, so I think that's covered everything that I wanted to cover, and I realise that that's been me talking for quite a long time, and it would be great to see if there's any questions and see if I can sort of help with people's understanding any further.
Thank you, Owen. That was such an informative presentation. So much information there.
A lot there, sorry.
No, that was great. That was so informative. It was really good. If anyone has any questions for Owen, please pop them in the Q&A bubbles below, and he can address them with us while he was here with us. It was really interesting to see how StructureFlow is far more than just a PowerPoint replacement. It is a collaborative, data-enriched deal structuring platform for professional teams, allowing everyone in an organisation to incorporate visualisation into their work. That was so interesting. I really, really enjoyed that, Owen.
Thank you.
So it doesn't look like there's any questions, but if anybody has any questions for Owen about StructureFlow after the session, please reach out to him via LinkedIn or on the StructureFlow website. Do you have contact details you want to pop up, Owen? Or?
There we go. So if you want to contact us, please do. There's the email address, info@structureflow.co. Delighted to hear from you. Feedback on the presentation, requests for the documents, requests for demos, anything would be great.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. A huge thank you to all of you who have attended today. As you know, the Centre for Legal Innovation is very much focused on these types of webinars, this type of information sharing, collaboration and experience exchange. We are all about practical solutions. There will be many more webinars coming up in the Legal Techy Tuesday series, so don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook or Twitter for announcements. We look forward to welcoming you back to one of our events, and thank you again very much for joining us today. Thank you, Owen, for a great session.
Thanks a lot, Christine. Okay, cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.